I'm going to tell you a little story about a lady named Jane. Jane was my student in Beaufort, South Carolina, and she was one of the most outstanding students that I've ever had. Jane was the type of student who didn't get 100% on her exams and her projects. She got 110%. I was so impressed with her throughout her whole studies that I stayed in touch with her after graduation, and she didn't know exactly what she was going to do. I was encouraging her to go to the best school that she could get into. I really thought she could go to like Harvard. She'd need to take the GMAT and demonstrate that she had the aptitude to do so. Didn't have the money, so I volunteered to pay that fee for her. I was a little surprised when she told me the GMAT had now cost $500, but I was still willing to do it. 10 times more than I paid, by the way. I guess that's inflation for you. But I stayed in touch with Jane. She didn't take me up on the GMAT offer. In fact, I'm pretty sure she never took the GMAT. But she took a job at a medical center in the local area around Beaufort. And I spoke with her maybe a couple times post-graduation. And one of the times she was telling me about she was in charge of collections for this organization and that they really liked her. And I wanted to be supportive of her, but at the same time, I really saw so much potential in Jane that I couldn't resist telling her, you don't really belong there. You have so many talents. You belong at an Ivy League school or something where a mind like yours can really be unleashed. And I don't know that she felt that I was giving her the type of support she particularly wanted. For whatever reason, she didn't have that in mind for her future, which is, of course, fine. It's her choice. But I wanted her to know that I supported her in bettering herself and taking opportunities that she might not have. She didn't have the support of other people around her. I lost track of Jane. We didn't have Facebook back then, and so I didn't have that kind of connection with her. And I knew that she was probably married and her name would change or at least be hyphenated or something. So I looked on Facebook. I couldn't find anyone that looked like her. And then every once in a while, every 2 or 3 years, I'll kind of have someone will come to mind, and I'll try to remember their name and their face and go searching and try to make a connection, renew an old connection. And I wasn't able to do it with Jane. But I ended up Googling her name, and I found an article in the paper. And the article, well, I'll just read you a little bit here. Authorities said that Jane, 29, of Capers Creek Drive, used money and a credit card from the Cross Island Medical Center to purchase items including patio furniture for herself and her companion over the course of a year and a half. Sheriff's Office spokesman Robin McIntosh said investigators believe that Jane, who formerly worked at the medical center office as an office manager, is responsible for company losses of $230,000. The amount is nearly a third of the company's annual operating budget of $700,000. She was charged with 3 counts of financial transaction card fraud, 6 counts of breach of trust with fraudulent intent, 2 counts of identity fraud, financial transaction card theft, and forgery. I know from another article that she was convicted at least of some of those charges and is paying back that amount over probably an extended period of time as remuneration for her crimes. Will probably be on probation for a very long time. She had a young child, so she was separated from her child while she served 3 years in a federal prison. You know, I know Jane from the past, and I would never, ever have suspected that she would do something like this. I had a sense that she was a good person, like I think of myself. I don't think I would ever do something like this. But examples like this prove to me over and over that we're all capable of really extremely gross violations of our own moral convictions, that they generally happen as small incremental steps in our life that we're not safeguarding ourselves against. I don't know the details of how all this happened, but I suspect that Jane engaged in some unethical behavior on a very small level for a period of time, and the consequences of that were not negative. She never got caught, And then, of course, she had benefit of this money that she had fraudulently gained access to buy, apparently, patio furniture and things like that. I don't know what was in her mind. I don't know how she rationalized this theft behavior, but I imagine that she had some rationalization for it. Sometimes people can be so simplistically minded that they think, well, I don't get paid enough. This is the only way I can get what I'm actually worth. I have to steal it. Maybe not if they say it out loud, but in their internal processes and their internal thinking, maybe they justify it in ways like that. I really don't know. All I really am left with is I believe a good person did something really bad. I think she should have had to go and do her prison time and pay it back, and there should be great consequences for that. I'm not arguing at all that she is innocent. She's clearly not. She's admitted to doing this. What I do want to say is that this could happen to anyone. It could happen to you, and it could happen to me. And the way in which we can avoid it is we can simply put the pencils back where we found them instead of bringing them in our house. The little things really are of more consequence than we often think. We're very good at rationalizing our unethical behavior, and so good at it that we can lie to ourselves. The worst lie you can ever tell is the one that you tell to yourself and you believe. It's always easy to get people around you to condone your behavior. You can always tell it in such a format that it justifies it. If you want someone to justify what you're doing and you know it's wrong, you know there's someone you can go to. What we need to do is be honest about what is good and what is bad, what is ethical and what is not ethical. And in this case, clearly she knew that she was breaking the law, and she knew that she was taking money that belonged to others. Somehow she rationalized herself away from it, a brilliant young woman whose future is gravely affected by the actions that she took at one period in her life. Her children and her family will live with the legacy that their mother has spent time in prison doing something that she should not have done. It's not over for Jane. She has a whole life to live. I hope she lives it well. I contacted Jane through Facebook. I sent her a message. The message essentially said, Jane, I'm aware of what's happened to you. I read the article in the paper. It's been many years since you and I have had any contact. I'd love to be in contact with you and be your friend. I want you to know that I understand that what you did was wrong. I don't think you're a bad person. It's very unfortunate these things happen. They could happen to anyone, including me. Jane never responded to my friend request, and I understand that. Her life has changed. Her relationships have changed. Her future has changed. All because she didn't stop herself early on in the process. And a small impropriety led to more and more, to the point where she stole so much money, and her crimes are so grievous that you and I and anyone reasonable would say that she needs a great deal of punishment, and there needs to be a lot of remuneration to make things right. For her, that included 3 years of time served in federal prison, a long time in probation, and of course the consequences to all of her family and friends, who I'm sure were shocked and disappointed in what had happened. Don't let this be you. And the way that you and I safeguard ourselves against these things is to stop early on. Return the pencils, return the pens, be a net giver. It costs you far less to stay far away from those critical points in which our ethical behaviors will create a big problem for ourselves. We can stay way below that threshold. And one good way is to think of yourself as a net giver rather than a net taker. Then you're never approaching it. Well, it's a sad story of my friend, but true and undeniable that it happens all the time. We have Enrons and scandals constantly in our country. I don't think most people wake up in the morning and say, hey, today is the day when I'm going to do something horrible, so immoral, and such a violence against my fellow citizens. It just happens because we don't stop ourselves early. Hope that helps. Bye.